Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edification, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Elkant's Movie Club. It's Elkant's Movie Club. Elkant's Movie Club. It's Elkant's Movie Club.
Live on Stibbs TV, and in the upper right-hand corner, it's our good friend Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Hello, Kent. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you guys. I'm full of Vietnamese food and ready to go.
Really? What'd you have?
Pho. You know pho? The soup.
Yeah. Michael Severe, huge fan.
Careful.
Yeah, there's I'm a big pho guy, and me and my buddies that go get it. First time we've been able to go and do it inside and not in somebody's porch or garage or whatever in a year and a half or a year and 2 months or whatever today. So
where are you going to get it?
Vung Tao is the name of the restaurant. It's
okay.
Quite good. 27th and just north of Vine.
I would like to try that.
Yeah.
I've not tried that yet, but and basically it's a, I don't want to say it's soup, but it's kind of.
It's soup. It's noodle soup with beef or all different kinds of beef or different meat. And then some, they bring some vegetables, stuff you can put in. It's really good. And don't get a large. If large, they're serious about large.
You're good to go.
Well, this week in the movie club, I decided to go back in time a little bit because I'd never seen this movie. And it was actually a pretty important film for a couple of reasons. Number one, it launched Eddie Murphy's Hollywood career. And two, it kind of kick-started an 80s fad, the buddy cop movie craze, which Eddie Murphy then later cashed in on on 3 different occasions with Beverly Hills Cop. But it's 48 Hours with he and Omaha's own Nick Nolte from 1982. I'd never seen it.
Same.
And so this was something I'd always wanted to see, and I saw it was on Amazon Prime, so I thought we're going to give it a shot. Real quick synopsis. I mean, it's pretty simple. Cop killers break out of prison, kill a couple of police officers, steal some money. Nick Nolte, who is a San Francisco detective, gets Eddie Murphy, who knew these guys, out on a 48-hour pass from prison where he's serving a 3-year sentence. And they work together to find these guys. And of course, because there's the cop versus the convict, there's plenty of drama there. I will say
a white cop and a black convict.
Yes, I will say
that matters.
That this is if you're not into rough language, and I'm not talking about necessarily swear words.
Yeah.
There's plenty usage of slurs in this film. Which does actually get addressed a little bit towards the end of the film as they're kind of talking to each other and they kind of get to know each other a little bit. But, it's definitely a movie from another period of time, Ken.
Well, absolutely. And what you're addressing there is one of the things that kind of drives me personally crazy these days is that everything has to be judged through well, they wouldn't make it today. It's too offensive, or it's too this, or it's too that. It's a movie of its time. And in fact, as you say, once, 15, 20 minutes before the end, he basically apologizes for saying, I didn't mean any of that. I was just being I can't use the word.
I was being a cop and you were a convict.
And at the time, that was kind of, I guess let's put it this way. Eddie Murphy has said that he wouldn't have made that movie if it hadn't had that in there, where it shows that this guy maybe wasn't as racist as he appears, and or he regretted it. Whichever way you want to take it, Eddie had said, no, I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't had that element in there. So the other thing that I think needs to be pointed out about this film is it was a massive hit. I mean, huge hit at the time. And so much so that Boys Are Back in Town song that when they come out of the Romans, when Cates is driving down to Romans and Eddie's in there and then they take him out, then they go after right at the end. That song became like a #1 hit and made the Bus Boys 2-year-long career or whatever it was, to the point where they played the Civic Auditorium in Omaha. They got instantly big enough to play a 7,000-8,000 show for 7,000-8,000 people in Omaha. That was, that's the kind of impact this movie had. And, it gets lost because it's not a great film, right? In the sense of it wasn't going to get nominated for an Academy Award or anything. So it just kind of got forgotten. But as you said, it started the buddy movie. It was, Eddie Murphy's big breakout. And I thought then it was I really liked it then. And I've probably watched it, I don't know how many times since then. And yeah, the language makes you a little uncomfortable, but so what,
Time capsule.
I think it's interesting. You can look at it a couple different ways. Like my first, when you hear some of that stuff, it's like, wow, holy crap. Because you don't hear it anymore. That one thing, it is kind of nice to see that there has been some progress made in that sense, that you see that stuff and you immediately think, holy moly, that is bad. And I know that they knew it was bad then as well, which is the whole point of what they brought up at the end. It was part of the storyline. But like you said, they wouldn't put that in movies today. And the other thing is, as I'm seeing that, is like, man, that wasn't that long ago. Like, that's crazy. Like, I
even watched Superbad, some of the stuff that's said in Superbad. And in the moment, I remember watching Superbad, and not to go too far down a different road, but I remember going to the movie theater and coming out and talking to like a family friend. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what high school's like. That's how everyone in high school talks. And I remember them being like, what? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that was how we talked at that time.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't realize in the moment, but he had been in some TV series. He had done some other films, and I kept mentioning that this was a big launch for Eddie Murphy, but it was also kind of the first big mainstream hit for Nick Nolte as well, wasn't it, Kent?
Yeah, he had a TV series before that, or a miniseries, 4-part miniseries that he was the star of. But this is kind of his first big starring role, and he got it because Clint Eastwood dropped out. Clint Eastwood and Richard Pryor were actually supposed to play the two guys, had originally signed on, and then depending on how the story that gets told, whether you believe whoever it comes from, Eastwood dropped out, but not because of anything wrong with the material. He had something else that he had to do. Walter Hill was, and so then immediately Richard Pryor jumped, right? So Walter Hill was looking to cast somebody, and they got Nolte, and his girlfriend at the time said, why don't you try Eddie Murphy, who was this hot young comedian from Saturday Night Live, and Eddie got cast, and there you go. So if it hadn't been for Walter Hill's girlfriend, Eddie Murphy may have never been in that movie, and who knows where it goes after that.
The thing that stood out to me, and again, I had never seen this. I don't remember why. I mean, I guess it just never presented itself, or at least I had thought about it. But when I came into this film, because it was the buddy cop genre, and it was Nolte, it was Eddie Murphy, it's a grittier, in my opinion, film than the Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Oh, much grittier.
Which, of course, Murphy was more the central figure in those movies, and he actually played the cop. And in a way, it made me enjoy it a little bit better. I mean, yeah, there's definitely moments in there where Eddie is being Eddie, like when he goes into the redneck bar and just tears these rednecks upside down and down the other. It's hilarious, but it's not like the usual, Eddie Murphy, going into his character shtick, where he, like he does in Beverly Hills Cop. So I actually liked the fact it was a little more reserved, and I wonder if because it was that way, it helped him as he then, kind of developed his shtick later on in the films that he ended up starring in.
Yeah, and you know what, John? It's funny that you say that because I thought it was fine. I didn't love the movie, and I've been trying to figure out why over the last almost 24 hours I didn't love it. And I think back to when we watched mid-90s, and you thought it was going to be a comedy. I assumed that this was going to be a much funnier movie than it was. I was kind of expecting more of a Beverly Hills Cop type movie. And so that it wasn't that, and that Eddie wasn't able to be Eddie of that time. And also, I think there's something to be said, too, for like the first buddy cop movie. It's like once if you've seen a bunch of other variations of something and then you watch the original, sometimes it just doesn't hold up because things have evolved and things have changed. And so I wonder if maybe that took away some of my enjoyment. But that said, Eddie Murphy, he played the role really well. I guess I just wasn't expecting that type of character.
And it's way darker and way more gritty, as you said, than this, the Lethal Weapon, the Beverly Hills, all of those movies that came after it, because they were going for the big box office and didn't want to offend anybody. Well, Walter Hill, the director, didn't care, right? He was making this police movie, basically. And you had a comedic element that you wanted to put in there, but not overwhelm. Eddie wasn't in a position, first movie, to go nuts. He goes nuts. Walter Hill that kicked him off the movie, right? And Walter Hill had trouble getting the movie, some of it made by the studio. He and the studio went. But this is very much a Walter Hill movie. And if you go and look at what he'd done, he did that Long Riders. He did Alien. He wrote Alien. He is very gritty. He said every movie I make is a Western in some fashion. And he made some real Westerns, but he also made these kind of movies that draw on the same kind of Western tropes. And he's not a comedic director. This and Another 48 Hours, and he made another movie with Eddie, Brewster's Millions. Those are the only Walter Hill movies I can think of that are remotely funny, right? That's who this came from. He also made that movie Crossroads about the guitar player making the deal with the devil. And he's made some really good movies and some really crappy movies. But this is a Walter Hill movie, not thinking that he was going to hatch this genre out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Kent, you mentioned earlier that the original scripted parts were for Clint Eastwood and Richard Pryor, which would have completely changed how the movie came off. And of course, those were guys that didn't necessarily need the rub, if you will, of stardom, because that was when Eastwood was at the top of his box office popularity, and Richard Pryor was coming into his own. So it was kind of nice, at least for this film. This gave Nolte and Murphy the chance to be elevated to A-list status. The other thing, too, that I think made it work better, if it had been Clint Eastwood, it would have been another gritty, angry, sarcastic San Francisco cop, which, of course, Clint Eastwood had already been playing in Dirty Harry. In fact, he had still had a couple more Dirty Harry movies to go after 48 Hours was made. So it probably turned out for the best for all parties that it ended up being Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy.
And Eastwood made sure to get his slur quota up once Gran Torino came out of.
Yeah, You're absolutely right on that. And it would have also been a completely different movie because those were movie star. It becomes a movie star movie in a way then too, right?
Yeah.
As opposed, the classic example that I use on this is every movie that Jack Nicholson was in after 5 Easy Pieces when he became a quote movie star was a movie star movie. It was Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson in whatever role he was playing. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm saying you have a different view of the movie with somebody like that in it, where when this came out, neither Nolte nor Eddie Murphy were big movie stars. And then, of course, they both sort of became that way. And what do you want to say? I think that's part of why this movie works so well. And they clearly had some chemistry.
Yeah.
The two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's no question about that. I enjoyed it. Again, it was a little different than I expected it to be. I'm with Josh. It wasn't quite as, gut-busting funny, but I still liked it. I thought it was well done, and I'm glad I finally, after all these years, got a chance to see it.
The
Tibbs, did you?
thing in this movie that I always want to point out is this had another set of ridiculous fights. Okay, these people are bare knuckle fighting each other. Hit somebody in the jaw with your bare knuckles, and then when you get done with that broken hand, hit them with the other hand, and then you're done. That doesn't happen in real life.
Yet it happens all the time in the movies. By the way, guys, did you notice, especially Josh and Stibbs?
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
You this.
Oh yeah.
The second cop that dies at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
You recognize who that was?
Mike Ehrmantraut.
Mike Ehrmantraut.
That's our friend Jonathan Banks.
Man, he played a frustrated with everything in life cop very well, and he parlayed that into playing a very similar character on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
And it must have been something about him and Eddie Murphy because, the first time we recognized Ehrmantraut was also in Beverly Hills Cop. He played one of the henchmen in Beverly Hills Cop. So,
that's right. He did.
He just had that look about him.
Uh-huh.
But as soon as I saw him pop on the screen, I said, "There's Mike Ehrmantraut."
I almost texted you guys because I think I was the first one to watch it. I almost texted you guys like, "Holy crap, Mike's in this!" Because he's in the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I for what it was, I did enjoy it. Outside of all the other stuff that might make some people uncomfortable. Once you get yourself into the mode and you're watching a movie, I was telling Josh, I laughed at parts that you probably weren't supposed to laugh at because it is just so like quintessential 80s.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is. And that's fine. But like it now being, decades removed from it, going back and seeing it is funny. You mentioned the fight scenes, Kent. Some of the sound effects for those fight scenes are just hilarious. Yeah, even the punch ones are like the actual hand-to-hand ones were even funnier to me because it sounds nothing like what it sounds like if you were to hit anything. Like it was stuff like that was almost more entertaining to me than even the storyline. But I thought that was, fine as well. It was a good, quick. There are movies like that still come out. That are kind of like you said, Kent, are really good for what they are, and then are kind of just forgotten about because they're not necessarily good movies, but they tell an interesting, intriguing story, and then they're just kind of out of the limelight in 2, 3, 4 years.
Stibbs, speaking of Eastwood, if you want a great movie for those types of sound effects, Every Which Way But Loose,
yes,
or Every Which Way You Can, because that will send you over the top in terms of the use of sound effects, because the whole movie is about bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought of, like with all the guns and the shooting is like, did nobody ever see anybody shoot a gun in real life back in the 80s? Because they're all just like running around like it's the easiest thing in the world. It's like, guys, put a little more effort into making this seem realistic.
I like that, like the bad guy who is in a ton of movies, by the way. I don't know his name. That guy is great.
Just made his career too.
He's awesome, and he's pretty good in this. He's again some corny dialogue and stuff, but there'd be scenes where like he'd shoot at Nick Nolte, and they'd show that frame, and then they'd switch to Nick Nolte, and he'd like move, like he could move out of the way of the bullet really quick. Like it was stuff like that just made me laugh, and it didn't ruin it for me because that's what the movie was. So I thought the story was fine. It was interesting. And I did think Eddie Murphy was actually really, really good.
I did too.
And, outside of that stuff, which, again, didn't bother me at all. When they first got Eddie Murphy out and they're walking out and he's like, you listen to me, you'll never be my friend. And you'll never I was like, I can't wait for 30 minutes when they have that scene where they're like, oh, we're buddies now. Like it was funny, but I mean, I'm glad I watched it. It was enjoyable.
The other 80s element that we have not talked about, all the nudity.
Just the random nudity.
Just random, right? You don't see that in movies anymore.
There was not a scene around a hotel room without a naked woman inside the hotel room.
That's true.
Every single, and there were like 6 hotel room scenes.
Yeah, and this is for all the Star Trek nerds, but if you remember your Star Trek The Next Generation, the actress who plays Tasha Yar, who was there in the first couple seasons, she's one of the naked chicks at the end of the movie.
Nice.
So if you're a Star Trek nerd and you've always wanted to know what she looked like naked, well, congratulations.
Here's your movie.
This is the movie. This is the movie for you. Who's got
an educational experience?
Yes, very educational. All right, Stibbs, what are you going to sick us with this week?
I already told you guys what I was going to pick, and I'm pretty excited about it. Mortal Kombat on HBO Max. Another movie that you just know what you're going to get, but
Stibbs keeps picking the movies that he wants to watch, but is too embarrassed to watch them. So he's like, let's watch it for the movie club.
Exactly.
Is this this one like Mortal Kombat?
Oh, you haven't heard about it, Kent?
Yeah, it's
no.
and everything.
It's like kind of getting not horrible reviews.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's not like the other movies that are. I mean, it's not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure, but it like the previews look pretty badass. The fight scenes look pretty incredible. I'm actually pretty excited, I will admit.
I remember watching the very first Mortal Kombat in the screening. It was like,
those are bad.
What is this mess?
Those are bad.
This is
really
why
bad.
If you're going to make movies about video games, it needs to be Donkey Kong, it needs to be Q*bert, it needs to be, Asteroid.
Was the Super Mario Brothers movie bad?
Oh, I was going to say, they made Mario, and that was horrible.
That awful. That's the Mario Brothers movie.
No thanks on that.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max.
HBO Max, streaming now.
Just tweeted out the link.
All right, well, Mortal Kombat next week.
I might watch it twice.
You might have to catch all the plot.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a tough movie to pay attention to. There's gonna be a lot of you gotta take a lot of notes during this one.
Yeah. All right, well, Ken, it's a beautiful weekend. Hope you have a good time with it. Hope you've digested your foe, and we'll talk to you next week.
And I won't be at the spring game.
Me neither.
Neither will we.
Yeah. I'll be here.
In practice, not a game.
Later, Kent.
See you, Kent. Have a great weekend. There he is, Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star. All right, coming up, we've got What You Say, we got Bet of the Day, and it's a One Beer Friday.
Yeah, it is.
It's a One Beer Friday.
Still no Aaron Rodgers news, but I'm still drinking a Coors Light in honor of the potential Aaron Rodgers news.
There was, I mean, I don't know that it's news, but it was interesting. Ian Rappaport, I didn't want to break in once I said no when you started talking about Coach Service, but I did see, he said, if Aaron Rodgers retires, and then he put in parentheses, hilariously, to host Jeopardy or just retire, he would have to repay the team $11.5 million this year and $11.5 million if he remains retired next year, all from his signing bonus. Unless the situation is repaired to his liking, this is a serious consideration, I am told. So he is digging in his heels, which is good news for me, I think.
They're just going to have a staring contest. Who's going to win?
Jeopardy, probably.
Jeopardy.
By the way, the NFL's opening round, it is the second largest audience ever. And it easily outpaced last Sunday's Oscars as the most watched non-Super Bowl program of the year. 12 million viewers.
So your conspiracy was right, John. It worked.
It worked.
Damn it,
I watched. I watched more than I expected before I turned on 48 Hours.
Last year was 15.3 million, but a lot of that's kind of associated with the pandemic because it was like the first.
That was the first thing we had in a month.
Live sporty event that we had.
Yeah.
In the pandemic, so it was down from last year, but still, 12.5 million, second largest audience in the history of the event. Crazy. All right, we'll come back with more after this. It's Unsportsmanlike Conduct live from TD Ameritrade Park on 1620 The Zone.